It was Pastor Aaron preaching last week. And so 2 weeks ago, when I preached on who is your neighbor. And we looked at the Good Samaritan parable that Jesus gave when someone asked the question about, what are the greatest commandments? How do I get into heaven? And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then he asked, well, who is my neighbor? And so we looked at that. Today, I want us to look at how do we love our neighbor, especially like in a modern day era, right? Because the parable that Jesus used to explain it to the man about like walking into an area and you find somebody naked laying on the side of the road, and we'll look at it. It's in Luke chapter 10. If you were to do that, you would just call 911 and you'd be like, hey, there's somebody here on the side of the road. And you might wait until like the first responder gets there and then you might move on. But so what are some other ways that we can love our neighbor? But let's read this passage so we have a good understanding of what was going on here. So in Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 25, it says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? Jesus replied, how do you read it? The man answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he brought the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave it to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. All right, so there's a lot in this parable to unpack. And 2 weeks ago, we did that. So I highly encourage you can go on our Facebook page. We have a group for just the worship services that has it. We also have a YouTube page within if it's not already up there, it will be in a few weeks. And you can basically hear the first part of us kind of dissecting this, right? Who's a Levite? Who's a priest? Like, what would it be a Samaritan? And we talked about, like, who is our neighbor? And we looked at this man and we said, okay, he was naked, so we don't know what status he was at. We don't know if he was a rich man or a poor man, right? We don't know if he was a slave, because they would use clothing as a way to kind of differentiate between the different people. We see that the Good Samaritan not only put him on his own donkey and brought him to a place where he would be safe, but he used some of his resources. Initially, the oil and the wine and bandages, and then he also told the innkeeper, look, here's some money for his stay, and keep watching over him till he's able to leave. And when he goes, if there's any money I still owe you, I'll pay it. So we don't see this man like changing his whole life and now forever he's taking care of this guy. It just was a 24-hour thing. He saw this emergency and he did that. But what I find interesting about the actual conversation Jesus was having with this religious teacher was what Jesus told him at the end. right? Because he says, now which one of these men was the good neighbor, right? 'Cause he's saying, who is my neighbor? And we know that the religious people had a hard time with the Samaritans, and we're not going to get into the culture about that. We talked a little bit about that last week. He can't even bring himself to say the Samaritan was the good neighbor. Instead, he says, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. What is he telling us to go and do? Right? At the beginning of it, it was, I want to go to heaven. What do I have to do to go to heaven? We know Jesus has summarized this before, so maybe the guy had heard some of those sermons, so he knows, like, he's going into the law, and when Jesus says, look, love your neighbor, love your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, love your neighbor as yourself, all the laws summarized into that, he could understand that, he could get that. Like, if you look at the 10 Commandments, right, first 4 are about honoring God, the next 6 are about honoring people. So he gets that. And so he's saying, right, okay, I'm supposed to love my neighbor as I love myself, but who is my neighbor? And then Jesus uses this example of how the Samaritan loved the neighbor, and when the man describes it, he says he had mercy on him. So we see loving somebody and mercy being connected here. I find that very interesting. I had someone ask me once, how do you love somebody that you don't like? Now, if you've been in a relationship, with people, whether it's your kids, your spouse, a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, your parents, I'm not sure you would really ask that question, because I think that we get it. Like, if you've raised teenagers, I might not like you. I love you, but I don't like you right now, right? Like, and sometimes we try to explain it by saying, like, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like who you've become, but I still love you. And we use this word love, and I've talked about this numerous times, in a weird way as humans. With the Greek words, they had different ways of explaining the word love. Now, when it translates to English, we just see love. But there's phileo love, and there's agape love, and there's, and we're sitting here, what does that mean? There's a way that, like, I love you as a brother, and then there's a way I love you unconditionally. And so, for some people, though, they equate love with a good feeling. If I feel good, if I like you, you're making me happy, you're joyful, I'm going to do something nice for you. That's what it means to love somebody. Or some people always just equate it with, like, sex, right, and lust, and how love can look like that. But really, the Bible tells us what love is. We see in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. We have a little one. We didn't know that church was going downstairs. In 1 Corinthians 13, it talks about what love is. And I find it interesting because when I was explaining this to that other person, I was saying, you're confusing love with feelings or with emotions. And love is a verb. If you go back to elementary school and you think about a standard sentence, right? You've got your noun, your verb, you've got adjectives, so if I say, like, I hit Jesse, I'm a noun, hitting is the verb, right? Jesse's the one that's receiving the hit, right? The action that she's getting it. I hit Jesse. Like, hit has no emotion, has no feeling with it. It's just something I did. Love is a verb. If I say, I love Jesse, it is literally an action. It is something I'm doing. Now, we can also equate it with a feeling, but really, love is a verb. It's something we're doing. So if we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, starting in verse 4, what does it say? It says, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. So how can I love somebody I don't like? Can I still be kind? Can I still be patient? Can I still protect? I mean, we do this more than you realize, right? Like, if anybody's ever been pulled over, can we look at verse 4 of that, Eric? If you've ever been pulled over, like by the cops, you might be anxious, you might be angry, you might be whatever, but you sure are kind, aren't you? If you're wise and you're smart, you're kind, even though you might be upset that they pulled you over. Yes, officer. No, officer. Right? Now, I've heard of people, and usually I meet them in jail, right, that are not kind when getting pulled over, or have done horrible things and said horrible things to a judge because they were upset with them because they had no self-control. And then they're not understanding why they got an extra 30 days added to their sentence, right? And I'm just like, hey, you have to learn how to use self-control to be able to operate in love. And God is love. God is patient and kind with us. And he wants us to not only love him, love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, but love your neighbor as you love yourself. This doesn't mean you like them. Doesn't mean you agree with them. I know during political seasons that people, they can't love their neighbor if they've got a Trump sign in their yard. They just can't. They just think they're a moron and they're an idiot, and like, you know, they'll let their dog go poop in their yard, right? Like, and I'm looking at it from a Christian perspective to say, can you love your neighbor even if they're voting differently than you? Even if you don't understand why you believe differently? Can you learn how to love someone that you don't agree with? Let alone have mercy if they're going through a hard time, right? That brings it to a whole nother level. So what does showing mercy look like? I mean, we know that love is a verb. Love is being kind to someone. Love is being patient with someone. I love how it says it's not easily angered. It doesn't say that you never get angry, right? If somebody came in here and started hitting my husband, I would be yelling. I'd be like, you get out of here. You leave him alone, right? I'd be like telling all the men to like, get that guy out of here. Like, you can't come in here and hit my husband, right? Like, it doesn't say that it never gets angry. It says it's not easily angered. And then it goes on, love protects, right? So like, if someone's being mean to somebody else, we're gonna have to step in and say something. And that would be a loving thing to do, to stop someone from hurting somebody else. So we know how we're supposed to act. And it's counterproductive to our human nature. Because before Christ came, it was eye for an eye. It was the Romans go in and conquer everything. It was, we've talked about this before, if a child was born and wasn't perfect, the Romans would literally say, cast him off to the dogs. There wasn't orphanages. There wasn't places for widowed women to be taken care of. It was literally, you just take care of yourself. And Jesus actually, in one of the times he's interacting with, he says, even people of the world know how to be kind to their own friends. But you as Christians will be known for your love. You will be known because, like, you don't only, like, I'm only nice to you because you help me out. There's something I can get from you. I'm nice to people because God has called me to love. One of the fruits of the Spirit, when you receive that Christ in you, is gentleness and kindness and patience and self-control. So like, it's literally when our life changes and we begin to learn how to love people that we don't like, it becomes a reflection of the time we've spent in a relationship with God. And I do believe, like, the reason why the first commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind is because when you take the time to love God and to understand God, and to connect with God and understand who He is and how much He loves you, you get filled up. And then all of a sudden that overflows when you're interacting with other people. The reality is, whatever you put in a cup, if I bump into you, that's what's going to spill out. If you put coffee in your cup and I bump into you, milk's not coming out. Coffee's coming out because you put coffee in the cup. So the question is if I am in the middle of a crowded space with you and I bump into you, am I going to get the blankety blank blank, watch where you're going, lady? Or am I going to get the, oh, I'm sorry, are you okay? Now, I don't know about you, but I've been in crowded spaces and I've gotten one and I've gotten the other before, depending on who I bumped into. And what just happened? Whatever was in them just spilled out onto me. And in both cases, it wasn't a reflection of me. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with what they had filled themselves up with. And so I can tell you who is your neighbor and I can tell you how to love them. But if you don't already made the decision to fill your heart with love, you can know what to do and it's going to be a lot of effort. Or it can just be in you and that's what spills out when you're encountering something. And let's be honest, like, we have to be intentional about what we put in us. My daughter, Claudia, just went to Atlanta, Georgia with the Career Center. They did life skills. And she did a community project. And she described, like, what we do here with the homelessness encampments and how we help people that are unhoused. And her and some kids from the Career Tech Center had come in and made up these go bags. So like if Pastor Aaron is out and about, or if we have somebody walk in that says they're unhoused and they're out like in the streets, we can give them this bag and it's got, maybe water in it. And in the wintertime, they'll have gloves or hot hands or hat and gloves, protein bars, just different things like that they might need. Now, she has been a part of the Dream Center for the last 8 years and has encountered a lot of different people and was intentional with bringing in these kids from her class to explain this project and why it was important, and they put it all together. Then they ended up doing an interview with Pastor Aaron about his encounters with people who are unhoused, and they filled themselves up with this knowledge. Then they go to Atlanta, Georgia. And they navigate the bus system, and they use Ubers, and they're going all over with different teachers in different places to sightsee. And guess who they encountered along the way? The unhoused, right? And so what I thought was interesting is that she said people would come up to them and ask for money. Now, I don't know about you. I've been in situations where I can tell people are just simply panhandling. In a lot of those cases, depending on the person and how aggressive they are, and just from years of interacting with people, I have judged them. Is it okay to be honest and let you know the truth? That I have judged them and been like, okay, this person is either drinking or maybe they're on meth or there's something like going, maybe they just smell like alcohol, right? And they're asking me for money. And I'm just like, I'm not giving you any money, right? Like I'm just not. And Claudia has done all this work. She's down there literally to do this presentation about the unhoused because they had won a regional competition, they won the state competition, and now they're at this national competition to present their community service project. And so she says to the first person that comes along, right, I don't have any money to give you, but I have food. And she offers them like, granola bar or whatever she has in her bag. And this began to continue on all week because they flew in on Monday, they didn't fly out until Saturday. So now she's like coming prepared. Now she's got her bag, she's called it a mom purse. She's like, I ended up having to use a mom purse. I'm like, oh, that's so terrible, right? All of us moms are like, now you know why it's so important. And in it, she had some bottles of water and she had some granola bars, right? And She said some of the people would come up and would accept the food, would be very grateful and thankful. And then some of the people would say, no, I don't want that, and keep going looking for money, right? And we've had these conversations. People who are truly hungry, they'll take whatever you have, right? A lot of times people that are truly hungry and really not doing well, they won't even approach you. You'll just see them sitting, lying there, like they're usually very quiet. They don't even have the strength to get up. The ones that are super aggressive, and a lot of times are the ones that are coming off of a high and looking for some cash to get their next fix. But what I thought was the most interesting is she told me, she said those that accepted the food, almost all of them, would say, will you pray with me? And what I explained to her was, that shows me that in Atlanta, Georgia, in the areas where she was, that there is a church group that regularly goes out and brings food and always offers to pray with them. And so now, when these people are encountering somebody who's handing them the water bottle, handing them the food, they're just expecting and wanting that prayer. Now, here's the thing. They just had probably over 1,000 kids from all the different states, 40 some plus states, come together in Atlanta, Georgia for this conference. The reality is not all of them probably knew what to say to an unhoused person when they walked up to them and said, can I have some money? There probably were some of them that just felt guilty and grabbed whatever change they had in their pocket and just gave it over. There were probably some of them that said, bug off. Don't talk to me. There were probably some of them that just ignored them and walked away. Now, the reality is, there were probably some people who probably didn't have a loving response. They were probably great kids that probably just were anxious or nervous, right? And first time in a big city, didn't know how to respond to that. I know when I was 15 years old and on a bus trip with the school, coming from a very small town, and somebody was standing on the corner, and this guy was mad at all of us. We were coming out of a restaurant. I didn't even pay for the restaurant. The school had taken us there, and the bus was right there. And instead of getting on the bus, he was like, do you have any money? And I didn't have any money. I was like, no. And he's like, well, you just ate a $50 meal in that restaurant, and we're down here starving. And I was 15-year-old girl, scared, and I was just like, I'm sorry. And the bus driver's like, get on the bus. Just ignore him. But there wasn't anything in me to come out. I had no idea how to love that neighbor. But because Claudia literally has done this project and has been doing this for a while, her response was to pull out a granola bar and hand it over. What's interesting is all the people around her that encountered this with her began to learn what to put down in their heart and how to respond to people in that situation. One of the boys she was with was from Virginia, and this guy comes up to them and asks them for money. Claudia's like, I've got a granola bar. She hands him that, and the guy says, thank you, will you pray with me? And Claudia's getting ready to pray, and the young man says, I'll pray with you. I'll pray for you. And he prayed. And what's interesting is he didn't get that because he had seen Claudia do it earlier. He hadn't been with Claudia before when it happened. He got that because that's down in him. Somewhere along his childhood, along his church experience, he had the desire, I need to love this neighbor in this moment, and he wants me to pray with him, so I'm going to pray for him. What do we have inside of us, right? The first time we encounter something, we probably don't have anything inside of us. We don't know what to do. Or we understand that many people are asking for money and they might be using it for drugs or alcohol, so we don't want to give them anything. And I often tell people when they ask me, what should I do when I see them panhandling? And I say, don't give them money. One of our rules to be a volunteer here at the Dream Center is you are not allowed to give out anybody money. And, they'll be like, well, but just, $5 here, $10 here. I said, the problem is you give somebody $10, they're going to go tell everybody that you gave them $10, and then I'm going to have 10 people showing up here tomorrow asking me for $10. I said, we don't give out money. That's one of our rules. I said, and you can tell them, say, Pastor Mary finds out I gave you money, I'm going to be in trouble. One lady, this is how she'd get around it. She'd be like, well, if Pastor Mary says I can give you the money, I will. So then the person came up to me and said, so-and-so said she'd give me $10 if you said it was okay. And I said, oh, she can go give you that $10, but then she won't ever be allowed to volunteer here again. And they looked at me and I said, that's one of our rules. She's not allowed to give you any money. And she said, okay, I won't ask her. Because she didn't want her to not be able to come back. One of our other rules is you can't take anybody home with you. And sometimes that's a hard rule for people. Like one time I had a lady, she said, I had to drop somebody off just in the park, and I cried the whole way home, and I thought, I have a guest room, I could have brought her home with me. And I said, you can't bring anybody home with you. I said, we've got the warming center here, we've got all these different things. Now, what's in them is mercy. What's in them is love. And that's why they make such a great volunteer. That's why I have to be the one that gets up here and says, please love your neighbor, but don't bring them home with you. Don't give them cash, right? And you're looking at me saying, but this is such a dichotomy. Did you hear the story about the Good Samaritan? He didn't bring the man home with him, did he? And we don't even know where that man lived. Maybe that Samaritan lived in that town, but he didn't bring him to his house. He brought him to an inn. And he didn't give the man who was injured money. He gave it to the innkeeper for care of the man. We can have mercy and not necessarily do exactly what this person wants by giving them the money or bringing them home with us. We can still have boundaries. Maybe that's why Jesus wants to do the boundaries book for the leaders right now, right this month. Boundaries, if we read in that love chapter, love protects. Love is not easily angered, is love. I can teach my daughter how to love people without bringing them into the home and wondering if they're going to abuse my daughter, right? I can have boundaries. And you can have boundaries in your love for your neighbor. Because sometimes I think people will abuse Christians by saying, well, you're supposed to love your neighbor, and I need this. Why don't you do it for me? And you have to have it already in you what your rules are, what your parameters are. When people will say to me, I see somebody on the thing and they're telling me this and telling me that, and I'll say, well, you offer them food? Jesus, there's so many places in the Bible where it talks about giving people food that are hungry. It never hurts to give somebody food. The next one is tell them about the Good Samaritan Rescue Mission, right? Give them information about where the inn is. And if you are in the place, give money. Be a monthly partner there. Be a monthly partner here. Be a monthly partner so you're giving money to the innkeeper because you're trusting that they're going to distribute it the way that it's needed. Now, I'm not saying we've never given people money for their situation, but I don't give it to them. There have been times where I have somebody call me and say, hey, I have a house, but our water bill got behind and the CPS found out I'm going to lose custody of my kids temporarily if I don't get my water bill paid, or I'm going to have to go stay at the mission. I really don't want to have to do that. And maybe they called United Way, and United Way is willing to pay half of it. And I look at our benevolence fund, talk to the board, make the decision, say, okay, we're going to pay half of it. I don't give the money to the person. I give it to the city for their water bill. Does that make sense? Sometimes we do need to give money to a situation, especially depending on the circumstance and what's happening. I've had people that couldn't bury their son call me up. And I say, well, I can do this much. Sometimes I don't even have money in the benevolence here at the Dream Center. Sometimes I have to just talk to my husband and I have to go down. because I want to have mercy for this person who's trying to bury their son, right? We can love people and have those boundaries. But the question is how do I have mercy, and what does that actually look like? And so when we look at this Good Samaritan passage, we see that the first thing what happened was help with the immediate circumstance. What could be done in that moment? Well, he's bleeding, he's naked, so the man puts ointment or whatever on the wounds, wraps him up, throws a cloak or something around him, puts him up on his donkey, and gets him to the place where he needs help. And then he ensured that he had continual help. We see in other places where Jesus had mercy. In John chapter 8, verse 1, this is a cultural mercy. But sometimes I think when we love our neighbor, it's a cultural thing we need to help them with. It says, "But Jesus went on to the mountain of Olives, and at dawn he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. And the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery." Now, it's really hard to have adultery by yourself. So I just like to point out that there was a man caught in the very act of adultery as well. For whatever reason, the friends didn't publicly humiliate him. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. And the law of Moses commands us to stone such women and the men caught in adultery," if you look at the Old Testament law. "Now what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Who's qualified to stone her? Anyone who is without sin. Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, some of those who heard this began to go away, one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left standing with the woman still standing there. Who is without sin? No one. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. What I love about this passage is he doesn't say any of you who have never committed adultery may cast the first stone. Because Jesus, God, does not look at sin and say one is worse than the other. He says, any of you who is without sin. And of course, they point out that the older ones went away first. Why? Because they've had more time to do more sinning. They have more things on their list. I have had people say, like, maybe he was writing out sins and, things that he could accuse people of. We have no idea what he's writing in the sand. But we do know that those men believed in the deity of Jesus so much that they were not going to risk the chance that he might list off their sins. And they left. So she's the only one standing with Jesus, who we know is God, so he hasn't sinned. He's standing there, he's looking at her, and he didn't come to force the law on people. He didn't say, well, the law says this, let me start throwing things at you. No, what did it say? Jesus came to save and not to condemn. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. And he offers her mercy. What does he say? He says, Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" Where did they all go? They dragged you out here and make a mockery of you. Where'd they go? Has no one condemned you? No one, sir, she says. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go now and leave your life of sin. So in this case of mercy, what does he do? It's the same thing like with the Good Samaritan and the man who was beaten and robbed. He took care of the immediate situation first. He didn't first in front of everybody say, well, let's talk to her about whether or not she should continue sinning like this and getting caught by doing this and the pros and cons of how this is affecting her life. He didn't do that. He didn't say anything to her in front of anybody else. He didn't speak to her. He spoke to those who were harming her, who are oppressing her, who are condemning her. And the first thing he does is take care of the immediate situation. And they all left. He addressed them, and they all left. Next, he reassures her that she's not condemned by him either. It's crazy because he doesn't say, like, where are your accusers? He says, where are they? Has no one condemned you? They started off by wanting to accuse her and condemn her, but now they're gone, and they were the ones that wanted to condemn her. There's no one left to condemn her. He says, then neither do I condemn you. He not only took care of the immediate situation that she was in, that was a crisis, because they wanted her to die. They wanted to stone her till she was dead. But then he reassures her that he does not condemn her. And then next, he gives her advice for her future, right? Go and leave this life of sin. When we see the man healed in the pools of Siloam, it says that Jesus tells him afterwards, go and sin no more, lest something even worse happen to you. The reason why God gave us the law and told us not to do these things is because there's earthly ramifications for these things. So how did Jesus have mercy on someone in a bad situation? Immediate situation first, reassures them, and then advice for the future. We see this time and time again. There was a man who was demon-possessed in one area. And when Jesus arrived, the man rushed to Jesus, and it said that this man was in such a bad place in his life. It says that they would try to chain him, and he would break the chains. It said he ran around the town naked. He would just kind of isolate himself up in the caves near the cemetery. And then when Jesus comes into town, he goes to Jesus, right? And he's begging him for mercy on him, to help him. And what does Jesus do? Same thing he does with the woman that was caught in the very act of adultery. Takes care of the immediate situation first, casts out the demons. He reassures this guy. And when the guy says, I want to go with you, he says, let me give you some advice. Go back home to your family. Let them see that you've been recovered. He came on the earth to give us an example. And so when I look to the scriptures to say, how do I have mercy on someone? I look to all these different examples and say, these are some desperate situations people were in. I've encountered people who were caught in the very act of adultery. I've had people call me up and say, my husband came home early from his trip and this is what he found and this is the situation I'm in and my family won't talk to me anymore and this and this and this is going on, and just crying and wants to know if I condemn her as well or condemn him. You can imagine, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I've had a lot of conversations with people over the years. Usually, I look at what's the immediate situation, what's the immediate thing that needs to happen, and give them information or advice or help if I can. And then I reassure them, I don't condemn you. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But here's some advice for the future of how you can move forward with this. But too many times when I've talked to them, those who they thought were going to be there for them weren't. I remember being on Facebook, of all things, and somebody I went to high school with reached out to me. And she says, I want you to know that I remember how you were in high school, and I read the posts you put on social media today, and I want you to know that I went to church last Sunday for the first time in 15 years. And I was like, that's awesome, but why haven't you been in church for the last 15 years? And she said, remember when I got pregnant in high school? Yeah. She said, my pastor pulled me up in front of the entire congregation and pointed out that I had sinned and I was shunned and no one was allowed to talk to me anymore and I was to leave the church. And she said, I haven't set foot in a church ever since then. And I thought that God just hated me and condemned me because I had had sex as a teenager and gotten pregnant. And I had felt condemned by God. And it wasn't until I reconnected with you on social media and saw your things that it made me realize that was just a person that did that. It wasn't God. How we love our neighbor, how we love those that need mercy reflects God. Why do you think Jesus told them, look, even people of the world know how to be kind to their friends. You will be seen as different because as Christians, you will be known for your love. Now, not every single Christian is perfect. That was a Christian minister who did that to my friend in high school. But we don't have to follow the example of someone who has become a modern day Pharisee and is just preoccupied with the law and condemning people. We can be Christ followers, Christians, followers of Christ, who did not condemn people caught in the act of sin, but instead said, I condemn you neither. You are not condemned. I didn't come here to condemn. I came here to save. We can be surrounded by people like Claudia or Weston from Virginia, who when somebody comes up to them and says, well, can you pray? They say, yes, I'll pray for you. Most of my friends, what they do is they just either text me, call the church, or try to find me on Facebook and message me and say, Pastor Mary, on the corner of this place and this place is a person that has a sign. Can you go help them? And I'm always like, well, I could. What's their situation? What's going on? Well, I didn't talk to them. I just drove by and saw it, and I thought I better let you know. I was like, thanks. Like, let's try to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And yes, if you need help with that, I gladly will help you with that. But I honestly cannot be on every corner of the city. Neither can Pastor Aaron. Most of the people we encounter, though, that we need to love and have mercy on is in our own family, is in our own home. I'm being honest. One of the things pastors will always talk about is how the pastor's kids a lot of times will turn their back on God and the church. And, you know, it's like the curse of being a pastor. And I understand enough child development. I always found that interesting. I always thought, like, what's going on in your home? Like, is it just simply an attack from Satan on your kids, or is there something more going on? And recently they've come out with more studies, and they said that the kids that grew up in pastors' homes that did not see a reflection of what was preached in a pulpit in their home are the ones that are most likely to turn their back on God. See, we can say we're a Christian, I'm supposed to love people, but do you love your own family and your home? Do you love your kids? That means when they make you mad, can you be patient with them? Can you be kind with them? Doesn't mean you don't parent them. My kids are parented. They're probably parented more than they'd like to be parented. But they're also loved well. And I think it was like Mother Teresa, which I always thought this was so ironic because she didn't have a husband. She didn't have kids, right? She's a single woman. She's a nun. So she's literally just in a convent with other women. And of course, they go into the streets and they went all over India and helped people and started this whole movement and change within the Christian, especially Catholic world, of being sisters of mercy, they called themselves, right? And she said, people would ask her all the time, like, how do I love my neighbor? How do I be a person of mercy as a Catholic? And she says, go home and love your family. Because if mercy doesn't start in your own home, how can you be merciful to those around you? Now, if you're a narcissist, that's the classic sign of narcissism, right? That you're nice and you put a show on when you're outside of your home, but in your home, you're a tyrant. So, if that's a hard concept for you, ask the Lord to soften your heart and to teach you how to not only care about your image in front of other people, but instead to actually walk the walk everywhere you are. And start with your home. There's different approaches to marital problems, and one of the biggest studies that they did, they discovered that couples who typically have an argument but end up staying married and end up doing well are couples that even in the midst of the argument or shortly after can, they call it like bids for attention, can do the right thing, do the nice thing, even though they're mad at that person. So for example, let's say Pastor Aaron is just being stupid and I'm pissed, right? Can I say that in church? Sorry. I'm mad at him. I'm really mad. And I'm not going to talk to him, or I want to talk to him, but I want to yell at him. And I'm trying to be, self-control. So I'm not going to yell at him, but I'm really mad at him. And I'm going down to the kitchen to get a snack. And I know he really likes having a snack before bed. And I get him the snack, even though I'm mad at him. And I bring it up and I hand him the bowl of popcorn with maybe homemade caramel sauce on it. I wouldn't actually do this. He makes it the best way. But I'm just using an example. I would do something easy, like scoop out some ice cream and put peanut butter all over it. That's his favorite way of having his ice cream. And I grab my snack and I come up, even though I'm not talking to him, and I hand him the ice cream and I sit down. Now, what did I just do? I loved him even though I didn't like him in that moment. That is an example of love. For me, with the kids, it's like, you better get your room clean before the end of the week. And I'm mad about this, and this. And then I turn around the next second and say, okay, so when are we going shopping for your prom dress, right? Like, when are we doing this? And when are we doing that? Like, I can correct you and still love you. That the hardest thing was for my stepdaughter, to come into the thing and, like, hear me, like, be mad about the dishes and have to get her attention about it. And then the next minute, be loving on her. And she's like, wait a minute, aren't you so mad at me about that? I'm like, well, I told you how I felt about the dishes. I still love you. I still want to do this for you. How do we show mercy? Because here's the thing, when we condemn and we put law on our family, we're just being like a Pharisee. Like with the woman caught in the very act of adultery. Like when the kids say, my mom's going to kill me, and they actually believe, like, this is the end of it, like, she's going to be so upset, I better not tell her. It's kind of like the woman that was caught in the very act of adultery, going to be brought before everybody and stoned. How do you have mercy for your family? How do you have mercy for yourself? If we condemn ourselves all the time, and we don't think ourselves are good, how do you love your neighbor as you love yourself? Some of y'all just need to learn what God's love is. Fall in love with God. Read the book of John. If you don't have a Bible, there's Bibles inside that tent. Grab a Bible. Read the book of John. If you get done with the book of John and you say, Mary, I don't get it, read it again. And if at the end of reading it the second time you don't get it, read it again. Underline every time it says love. And get to know who Jesus was and who he loved and how he showed mercy. And then just ask him, say, Lord, do you love me that much? Ask him. I don't have to prove God is real. If you're not sure if God is real, ask him, are you real? Show me. He'll show you. He's God. I could go on and stories about people I've prayed that with who were genuine, like wanted to know if God's real or not. And I prayed over them, and then they come find me a week later and tell me what happened. He loves you that much. He's God. He made the honeybees. He made your kidneys. He made the rods and cones in your eyeballs so you can see color. He's God. He can show you he's real. He can show you how much he loves you. Fall in love with God, receive his love, and be merciful with yourself and be merciful with your family. And I pray that you fill up so much with love that it begins to fall out on the people around you. And people will know you and that you're different because of your love. I'm going to end with this. The whole thing is, who is my neighbor, and love my neighbor. And when I first moved to Bay City, I didn't get a chance to really get to know my neighbor. And if I'm really honest, after we were almost there a year, they came over and brought me some cookies, and I said something really rude. I was like, oh, I was wondering, who was over there. We've been here almost a year. Like, I could have went over there in that year and said hello. They finally come over to say hello, be neighborly, and then I'm rude to them. And I don't know why. I mean, that was 20 some years ago. I'm just being honest, I was rude to them. A few months later, I get stuck at the end of the driveway, and the woman who made me the cookies that I was rude to all of a sudden is there with a shovel, and she shovels me out. Talk about, a little conviction that, like, I needed to be nicer and I wasn't. 3 months later, she died. Unexpected. She was, like, in her late 40s, had a brain hemorrhage, and just died. And I felt the weight. Here I am, a Christian person, need to love my neighbors, I love myself, and I did not love her. I made sure that we brought food over to her husband. I made sure to invite him over to, bonfires after that. I was very intentional. Now I'm going to be a good neighbor. She only tried to give me kindness, but because she didn't do it on my timeline when I was expecting it, I was rude to her. When he got remarried, his new wife became a very good friend. I made a point to just, let's go for a walk, let's go get coffee, let's go do whatever. And we became neighbors. Began to try to love her as I would love myself. But I moved. I've moved since then. And the other day I got to meet a new neighbor. And they ended up getting invited over for a party. And at the party, because my birthday had just recently been the closest one, so we went around the room, and we do this when we have birthdays. We usually it's more simple when we do it in just kids. So it's like if you're turning 50, we say 50 things we like about you. So if there's 10 of us, we have to go around 5 times. And so it gets silly at the end, because it's like in the beginning, it's like, oh, you're so kind, you're this, right? You're really good. And then after 50, because you can't repeat something, right? It's like, I like how the hair drapes over your eyes. You know what I mean? Like, we get silly. Like when we're in the car and you do donuts in the snow, that makes me laugh, right? Like, you're trying to find things to say. But so it had been my birthday, and so people are going around the room and they're saying nice things about me. And because they haven't been there when the kids and I do it and realize it's just something little and simple, instead they're like telling basically how they met me and the impact I've had in their life. And all of a sudden the microphone gets handed to my neighbor, and they don't know me. I've just moved there less than a year ago, and I'm trying to be neighborly, right? And knew we were having this party. They'd see all the cars there, so we had invited them over. Pastor Aaron did. And so all of a sudden, they get handed the mic, and Pastor Aaron right away goes, "These are our neighbors. They don't really know Mary. It's okay. You don't have." And they're like, no, we want to say something. They're like, "You are really neighborly. You're really kind. Whenever," and the one lady, she goes, "Whenever my grandkids are outside, they just love Mary. They're like, oh, Mary's outside," because she takes the time to say hello to them and talk to them and comes over. And here's the thing. There have been times when this 8-year-old granddaughter is outside and they're like, "Mary, Mary, Mary," and I'm getting out of the car and it's been a long day and I don't want to talk to her, right? I'm being real. I want to go inside and take my shoes off and eat a Snickers bar. I'm sure some people want to come home and have a drink. I eat chocolate. That's my thing, I just want to go. And I'm like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And there have been times that I've gone over and talked to her or helped her with something, not because I wanted to, but because the Lord has asked me to love my neighbor as I love myself. And even though some amazing people that I have known for over 20 years were at that party, this sounds so stupid, but because my neighbor was like, "You're the best neighbors we've ever had," and like, "My grandkids love you," and you're such a nice person, thank you. And I'm thinking, they don't know me. They've not seen me intentionally, this is the first time they've been intentionally invited to something. They've not seen me at my best. They have seen me when I'm coming home and I don't want to talk to anybody. They've seen me when I'm going to be late. And if any of you know me, I'm going to be late. And I'm running out to the car. And it's like, "Hi, Mary, how are you?" And I take a minute to talk to them, even though I'm going to now drive 70 miles down the road, miles per hour, when I shouldn't be. And even though, like, I'm not looking for redemption, there was a part of me that was like, 20 years ago, when I was 25, moving to Bay City, and I was not kind to my neighbor. And there's no way for me to make up for it because she's dead now. I have finally filled up my cup and know how to be a good neighbor. And when somebody bumps into you, what comes out matters. And if what comes out right now isn't good, it's okay. If I could learn how to be a good neighbor, you can learn how to be a good neighbor. Let me pray. Father God, we thank you so much for sending Jesus down, not only to save us, but to teach us how to be merciful, to teach us how to love. Help us this week feel your love, fall in love with you, receive your love, and fill up our cup. Help us to love our families. Help us to love our neighbors. Help us to love those that are in the middle of a crisis with boundaries, but with kindness and patience. Help us, Father God, be so different that people want to know what it is, because we're different than what the world offers, because we walk in your love. We thank you for your word. We thank you for this opportunity. Be with every single person this week. May your Holy Spirit fill them. May the blood of Jesus cover them. May your angels be around about them. May your favor go before them. May they feel you this week and know you are real. May they receive your love. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen? Amen. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will be here next Sunday at 6 o'clock. Feel free to invite a friend. God bless. Hello, sir.